So, Sawadee Krap. Good morning to everybody. Of course, I understood the complete introduction. I hope I was laughing at the right places. So it seems you had some summary of yesterday's event, in particular with respect to the design thinking workshop. And you also learned that my talk this morning will focus a little bit on tools and techniques, to help discover, unleash, call it as you want, your creativity, and the creativity of students. And in fact, as you can see on the original program, I designed the talk to be given on 2 half days. So normally this morning I have foreseen to have some, if you want, more theoretical introduction into some creativity tools. And then there is a second half also foreseen where I would like to show you some case studies with particular application of particular tools. Really, case studies taken from my own students' works, so not fetched from very far, so that you can see how you can deploy these tools and that you can maybe get inspired also for your own work. And of course, what we also foresee, but this will depend on how many we will be. There will be a sort of practical part too, because I'm always convinced that if you learn about such tools when it comes to creativity, when it comes to tools for creativity, it's not sufficient just to have a theoretical course, but it's always about application. Okay? So, but as you had some nice practical session yesterday, I think it's good to have some theory part today. And then on Thursday morning, there was also a small change with respect to that, because from this afternoon on we will look deeper into some very structured creativity technique called trees. I will also mention it in my slides this morning. And also here we think that it's not sufficient just to do a theoretical introduction, but we have foreseen to open up a creativity challenge supported by an e-learning system for you in order to have some at least initial practical application of the trees method on Wednesday morning. So that's the plan. So I think the menu is full of good food to choose from, and I hope you will get the taste of it. So, I always adore using pictures from nature, because for me nature is perfect and we can learn so much from nature. And when it comes to creativity, all these magnificent fish here and magnificent colors, for me they symbolize diversity. Okay, and diversity for me is a key word which is so important for creativity and innovation. So bring together many different people from different national cultures, from different educational backgrounds, different age, different gender, and also let them apply a diverse set of techniques, in order to exploit their creativity potential. Because one thing is sure, we are all creative, normally. We just have to observe babies. They don't know about all these creativity tools that we learn as adults. They don't need them. Why is that so? Why do we need techniques and babies don't? What do you think? I help you a little bit. Sometimes we also, when we do creativity stuff, why doesn't that work? Is it connected? So there is the receiver normally. No, it doesn't work. Don't know. Can you check it, please? Sorry. Hey, it's a computer problem. You know, sometimes you may have heard that. Maybe also Lookit yesterday used it. Thinking out of the box. Yeah, all these techniques aim at helping you thinking out of the box. Have you ever heard of that? Out of the box thinking? Yeah, I see some nodding heads. What does that mean? What does it mean? Out of the box thinking? Beyond your box. Yeah, what does the box indicate? I don't have any box. You don't? Oh, I envy you. So what does that mean? What is the box? No, I wouldn't go so far, an impossible idea. Very simple. And this is where we approach the answer to the question, what is different with babies than with us? Yeah, experience, it's our context. Yeah, our daily context, our daily habits. Babies don't have habits, yeah, I mean they are born, they have no limits. Yeah? Of course we start by educating them, we give them limits. Yeah? We teach them limits. And then if you think further, of course we have to educate them because, you know, our society has some limits, yeah, and babies have to learn these limits. And then once they enter school, what happens in school? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Permanently, they are taught what they have to do. Yeah. So if you rephrase that, from the early age on, everything is done to kill creativity. Of course, I exaggerate a little bit by purpose, but you know what I mean. Yeah, also by the educational system. Yeah, so I mean there is some transformation ongoing, but there hasn't been any innovation in education ever since. Yeah, so there's still, like, you know, the teacher and pupils in front of the teacher, and teacher tells pupils what they have to do and what they must not do. Yeah? Instead of, you know, doing it vice versa, yeah, being the teacher, the coach, yeah, for exploiting the creativity. Yeah? And this is also a little bit what is now ongoing in our cultures, where we say, okay, we have to do more innovation, we have to do more entrepreneurship and things like that. It's more and more going back towards, or it goes upstream to educational level, where we say we have to teach, yeah, under quotation marks, entrepreneurship in schools already. Yeah, there is something true in it, yeah, because here is where we have creativity potential, but it's not really about teaching, yeah, it's also changing the style we teach. Okay? So that's in the end what it's all about. Yeah? So these techniques, due to our daily context, our habits, our experience, it's typically very difficult for us to be crazy, yeah? To get out of the box, to think differently. And that's why very often we need some techniques. And as far as I've seen it yesterday, yeah, in the design thinking approach even, so I've seen a lot of post-its, yeah, classic, but as far as understood, you have done mainly brainstorming, haven't you? Yeah? Did you have some particular method to, you know, to get inspired and to get a lot of nicely colored post-its? Did you use some particular techniques? Did you use some? The cable is not long enough, yeah? Sometimes. Okay. Yeah, but very often brainstorming is used. Yeah? But as you will see, I mean, brainstorming is a little bit, I wouldn't even call it a technique. Because where's the help to get you out of the box? You are asked to think out of the box. Yeah, and think freely, but you're not supported in that, are you? Yeah? You may be supported by the group dynamics, yeah, because you get inspired by ideas given by the others. Yeah? but otherwise you're not really helped. Okay? And so there are different techniques, other techniques that have some, approach that really help you get out of your context, out of the box. And some of those we will be looking at this morning. It's also not exhaustive because, there are a lot of techniques, and there are also a lot of derivatives of techniques. There are some, as they are described in the book, and then of course you would vary them. There is no, no recipe, no law. Yeah? So you have to apply it exactly this way. Yeah? And so there's a lot of freedom, and that's why there is also, these techniques and tools come in many different tastes. Some engineering work here going on. Yeah? I just have to press a button, then I won't disturb you anymore. Okay, thank you. So this is a little bit the outline. Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so this will be the outline of my talk. Before I talk about the creativity techniques, the title is how to enable your students to be creative and things like that. I'm convinced even if you apply the best techniques, they will not work properly if there are not some prerequisites fulfilled in the team. Like a very good team culture is very important. Yeah? We also heard that yesterday, that the team should know each other very well and things like that. And also I'm sure the design thinking people have talked about that. Okay? So I consider this really very, very important. First, to talk about some mindset and team culture. And also mindset and team culture as a prerequisite to go from this rather more conservative, classical, sequential design to the design thinking approach that you have applied yesterday. Okay? So this will be the first part, and then I will switch over to first some creativity techniques. And then yesterday you've also seen, you come up with a lot of post-its, but in the end you have to do something out of them. Okay? You have a lot of ideas, and in the end you will have to select. Very often creativity challenge is not about just generating a lot of ideas, masses of ideas. At some point you need to select and then work further on the selected ideas. And also this is not very evident. And especially in a team, if you can't decide just yourself, if you have to make a collective decision. And also here there are some techniques which have been proven quite useful. And then, but this will be rather Thursday, then I guess some empirical methods and case studies as promised to show you how this can work out and to get inspired a little bit. Okay, so I will very briefly revert to, I would say, the paradigm shift in design that has been ongoing over the recent years, where, especially in Europe, in Europe we like to structure things, to give it a very clear and, if possible, a linear structure, because everything which is linear is very nice to work with. Okay, and this is why this model of Pahl and Weitz, to German people, has become quite established, where you see the design process as a linear sequence of steps that a team would run through to go from a task description, so could be your 24 hours challenge, or the challenge that you had yesterday with your dentist application, until you come up with a design solution. Okay? I won't go into detail of all these steps, but I've zoomed in a little bit, so you go from task to a specification, more or less, where you clarify the task, you come up with an initial specification. Out of the specification you would develop some concept, preliminary layout based on this concept design. From this preliminary layout you would make a more detailed layout, so a definitive layout, and then you would document what you have done, and then you have your solution. Okay? And immediately, of course, you have a lot of activities that you carry out. Okay? You see here at the side of this process that some arrows, yeah, I mean that indicate that you normally will go from top to bottom, yeah, but you can also jump back to the previous step and things like that. I mean, the way you worked yesterday, did you have the feeling that you worked like that? Very linear, from face to face. Does this very much correspond to what you have done yesterday? Yes or no? Rather yes, rather no?
Usually we have those steps to solve the problems.
Yeah?
We have to outline the view of the customers. Second one, we try to understand, and the third one,
Yeah, so first the problem, then understand the customer. Brainstorming, yeah? And the fourth one, what was the last one? Is a prototype. Yeah? Yeah, so at least, of course, you went up to prototype, yeah, which would be some preliminary layout here. Yeah? You stopped before, so you did not do a detailed design. Yeah? Effectively, of course, you had a lot of time constraints yesterday. Yeah? 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 Yeah. I mean, first it's more detailed, and I think that it was also, of course, we were instructed, yeah, by the instructors. Now you have to do this, you have to do that. So I had the feeling that you made steps, of course. Yeah. But when you were working together, yeah, I'm sure that it was rather a jumping back and forth in between the different steps. Yeah. So once you tried to understand the problem, yeah, then you had to understand your customers. Yeah? As you try to understand your customers, also your problem understanding should get deeper and better. Yeah? Once you come up with your initial ideas, I've seen you have some 5 functionalities that you have thought about. Yeah? So once you start prototyping, then what happens typically when you do a first prototype? Yeah? You get some feedback if what you thought is feasible to do. Yeah? You get inspired by the prototype for, you know, some new functionality or for some changing functionality. Okay? So it's the real design process is much more a back and forth in between those different phases. Yeah? Very often far from being linear. Of course, the outline structure, as you were saying, yeah, is always you go through some steps, yeah? But what you do in these steps and in between the steps is typically highly dynamic. And the more creative you are, the more it's dynamic. Okay? And the second thing, which you don't see here at all, you told me 3 of the 4 steps, in the end you tried to understand the problem, didn't you? Yeah? So first the task, then you try to understand the customer. Long before you thought about solutions. Yeah? And also here, when you look at this model, then, you know, all these steps are somehow the same size. Yeah? So you don't know how much time do you spend in which phase. Yeah? Is it more problem understanding? Is it more prototype design? Is it more final solution design? You don't see that. Everything seems to be the same. And also what you don't see, of course, is the stakeholders involved. Yeah, you don't know who is doing what. Okay? Yeah. So of course, in the great and the whole, this model has its validity, yeah, but it's not sufficient to describe a highly dynamic design process where a lot of different stakeholders work together, inspire themselves, approach together in a collaborative way to a solution and things like that. Of course, this kind of model has also implications in how you typically work together. Yeah? When you look at that model, then such kind of waterfall-like process, yeah, you might have seen that, so sequential process, where you would go from one phase to the other only when you have finished, yes, the phase before. Okay? So only if you have, let's say, yesterday, yeah, so first you would have to do a clearly defined opportunity, in sense of, you know, there's an opportunity with a nice app to motivate people to go to the dentist, yeah, and to do nice, in an easy way to get an appointment there and things like that. Yeah, so first do a description, and unless this description is not finished, you don't start ideating about any kind of thing you could do, okay? So only then you go to concept development, only then you go to product design. So purely sequential sequence of phases. Yeah. This is how a lot of companies worked up until the 80s, 90s, something like that, okay? So when you look at the second process here, the concurrent engineering, yeah, and this is something which is sort of state of the art in industry now. Yeah. What is the difference between this purely sequential process and the concurrent engineering when you look at that picture? There's some overlap, yeah, an overlap in time. Yeah. So they start to parallelize tasks somehow, yeah, to make them overlap. Yeah, what's the reason? What do you think was the main reason to start working like that rather than the other way? Yeah, shorten the time, yeah, save time. A shorter time to market of products, yeah, which is more and more necessary, as you know. Yeah. But what could you imagine is also an advantage of doing that apart from saving time? What happens here?
No need to finish the first before.
Yeah?
Can work the second.
Yeah? And which also enables some feedback of the next phases. Yeah? So you may have a nice concept, but you do a prototype and realize that you can't do it somehow. Yeah? Yeah? Or you might make a very nice design, and what classical what always happens, you don't plan for production, you don't design for manufacturing. You design a nice shape, you know, with a particular, choose a particular material because it has to be lightweight, it has to be everything. But then when you give it to your colleagues from manufacturing, they tell you, okay, I'm sorry, yeah, but with our existing process we can't do that. So you have to start all over. Yeah? But if you have this overlapping, then you allow those experts to interact, yeah, very early, and to get inspired by each other, to exchange constraints that you as a designer have to take into account. Okay? Yeah? So this is the first paradigm shift, yeah, that leads to something like design thinking, yeah, that you have applied yesterday. And then there is a second movement, or has been going on over the recent years, yeah, where organizations not only overlap on the time scale, but if you look at this figure here, where do you see another overlap? Where else could you overlap? Think about the fish picture on the title slide. You had fish yesterday too in your challenge, I know that. Stakeholder. Yeah, very good. Yeah, so we don't leave those teams, those expert teams, completely separate. Yeah, only the designer guys, only then the engineers. Yeah, and only electric engineers, only mechanical engineers. Yeah, and Okay? We mix the teams. We create diverse multidisciplinary teams. And also moderate their way of working in a way that, you know, they very clearly exchange about requirements that they have, about constraints that they impose on the design of your product, on your service, in a very structured, in a justified manner, yeah, so that it's really a team of many people is more than just the number of people that they are in. Yeah? They really can capitalize on the collaborative knowledge in order to both shorten the time but also increase creativity. Okay? So this is what is then called the integrated engineering, or what is in the end behind this notion of design thinking. Okay? Highly interdisciplinary teams working in a very dynamic way with each other and always having the complete life cycle. Yeah, here is the product creation process, but the complete life cycle of the product in mind, yeah, in their minds. And if you want them to do that, then almost naturally you have to have this interdisciplinary, because a design engineer can't be expert for everything. Yeah? He or she can't be expert in manufacturing techniques, in sustainability questions, environmental impact of my design solution. How should I know? Yeah? Okay? So this is also a little bit important for me. And of course, this design thinking is also a lot of, you know, marketing. You will read that many times, also in management methods now, design thinking and things like that. But there is more behind that, yeah, than just, you know, putting people together, being creative and creating a lot of ideas. I don't know if Lukic showed that picture to you yesterday. I haven't seen it at the time when I peeked in the room, yeah, so I don't think so. But this is somehow by the originators, yeah, by Tim Brown and Dave Kelly, a depicturing of what actually you do in design thinking. Yeah? If you compare that to the original picture that I showed to you, Ball and Bytes, what strikes you immediately if you look at that compared to Ball and Bytes? If I say this is the design process according to design thinking, what is completely different? Any ideas if you compare that to that stuff here?
For the first two, you get into just go ahead direction, one directions.
Yeah.
This cycle you can go back.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. You go back and forth between what? Do you really see here really some stages, clearly defined stages? Can you see that? I can't. Yeah, of course you can't read that in between. Here is just some instructions. So this is just some instructions of what you do in the different, what they call spaces. Yeah, they don't even say faces, but space. Yeah. In the design thinking, you rather move in a specific space than you go through a very clearly defined stage or phase. Okay? So you move here in the inspiration space. Yeah? It's when you are working together, you know, sitting on the floor and designing and putting post-its and, you know, trying to understand the problem. Yeah? You have an ideation space here, yeah? And then finally you have an implementation space. If you compare the size of these three spaces, what can you see? Hmm? Yeah? The time for inspiration, yeah, is what? Is long, yeah. If you add to that of ideation, because inspiration and ideation is not far apart from each other, yeah? So the creative phases, the highly creative phases, the inspiration, ideation phase, if you take them together compared to implementation, I mean, it's all about inspiration and ideation almost. Implementation is a very tiny space. See that? Now, the idea is, the better you understand your problem, yeah, the more you got inspired by potential solutions and the more you discussed about these potential solutions. Now, yeah, the more likely it is that you have a first time right implementation, because you have thought about everything before. Okay? So the quicker you just, the first solution that you have in mind, you start implementing it. Yeah? And once you implement, you see, I can't do it, yeah? Or it's not really what I wanted. Yeah? The more you have to revert back and start over again. And this, we believe, it's a very important philosophy to teach to students. And it's same, we also do a lot of industry coaching and consulting. In our cultures, it's so, when we go to work, the culture is like that, when we go to workshops, to meetings, we are always result-oriented. Yeah? So at the end of a workshop or meeting, there has to be a result. Yeah? And when it's a design workshop, there has to be a solution. Yeah? So we are pushed, we are always urged towards thinking about solutions immediately. Yeah? And this is not good for innovation and creativity. Because, of course, you're inside your box. And inside your box, you only see those solutions that you know already. It's your box, it's your context that you have seen anywhere on the web or whatever. Yeah? And it's very difficult to get some distance from your context, from what you know, but exactly this distance is necessary to innovate and to come up with new creative solutions. And also students, of course, they're very often just, pressed solution. And nowadays, I don't know you, but if you give them some exercises, if I do creativity challenges with them, without me urging them to think because they all have a brain, and they're all creative, they all, it's natural, we do it too. They go on Google, type keywords, they paste in some photos, and that's my solution. Yeah, it's not good. Of course, you can use this to support and whatever, everybody does it. Yeah? But it's so important, this paradigm, this is what I like in particular about this design thinking. It's a big space of first deep problem understanding. Diving into, they may have told you, what they propagate is even they send designers to the terrain. Yeah? So when they design solutions for, for supermarkets for third world countries, they would send designers to a third world country, for example, to Ethiopia, to wherever, to make the designers understand the particular context people live in there. I mean, if you don't have that as a designer, you would design a high-tech, water irrigation pump, which they cannot use. They can operate it, neither if it falls out, if it's defect, they can't repair it because they don't have the materials, they don't have the skills, nothing. Okay? Yeah?
That's been really the inspiration that most from experience.
Yeah, not only. Of course, a lot of inspiration comes from experience, but then what is interesting is that you mix different experiences. Yeah? That you would have people inside coming from, not only from technical fields, we know that we are among engineers here, I suppose, but that you also have people from biology, from social sciences, from law, to help you, it's nice that you think about that, but there is a law restricting or whatever. Yeah? So inspiration is, of course, quite naturally something which is also restricted per contributor, per people, but by having a lot of diverse experience profiles, yeah, it's nonetheless you as an individual can go beyond your box, yeah, by the help of the others. And of course, when they say inspiration, and we can zoom into that now, yeah, they say in order to get out of the box, of course, diversity, yeah, which what they say involve many disciplines from the start. Yeah, you should have this in your papers. Yeah. And they say, look at the world, what people do. So observe people. Yeah, what are their real needs? Yeah, what are the real problems? Yeah, for a designer, a problem is an opportunity. Yeah. And this is also how you get inspired. Yeah? Observe what you don't know yet. Yeah, constraints anyway. Yeah? Then what else do we have? This is also interesting. Pay close attention to extreme users, such as children or elderly. Yeah? Very often we have a standard stakeholder, customer profile in mind. Yeah? What about babies? Yeah? What about elderly people? What about handicapped people? Yeah? We know that very often they have very particular needs and requirements, and which could lead to completely different design solutions. Yeah? Sometimes. Yeah? Yeah, and then of course what they promote, but you've had this yesterday, yeah? So I won't repeat that. I think just you didn't have these spaces, yeah? And I think this is important to understand, to get a little bit, distance of what you have done yesterday. Yeah? So the work with post-its and so on and so on, I mean, this is clear. And then I think what they also told you, it's very important to prototype. But when they say prototype, they mean very simple prototypes. Yeah? Not highly, of course, nowadays with the 3D printers and a lot of technology which is at disposal, yeah? Even to students. It's very nice. Yeah? But what they mean is, very simple prototypes using pens, using paper, using, just to have some sort of what we call intermediary object. As soon as you have something tangible, it's more easy to discuss about your ideas. Yeah? But also what they promote, and this is also something very important, it's written somewhere, yeah, describe their journey, tell more stories. It's here, yeah? Storytelling. Yeah? Put your idea in a context. Yeah? So yesterday I had some terrible headache, yeah? And I found out it was coming from the teeth, whatever. I wanted to call my doctor, but telephone was always occupied and whatever. So it was very, very difficult to get an appointment. And you put people in a situation, and in this situation you describe the added value of your idea. Yeah? Rather than just say, okay, I've thought about this application where you can do an appointment, with your dentist and so on and so on. Yeah? You put it in a context of a use where your idea brings added value, with respect to what we know today. So this is also what they normally promote a lot, storytelling, when you present ideas. Yeah, and then rest is implementation phase. And what they also say that is normally the members of the team, they should have the opportunity in different projects, of course, to walk through or to work in all these spaces, so that you get a feeling of how it is to, how, for example, you can present your ideas in a nice way. Yeah? Sometimes people, they create a lot of ideas, but then they can't push them further because they can't sell them. Yeah? And that's especially in industrial organizations, that can be a real problem if you can't sell your idea. Yeah? At the university it's probably not so much of a problem because, you know, you have much more freedom. But in industry, you need some financing, some support. You need people to implement your idea, and unless you are unable to sell your idea, you won't have that opportunity. Okay? Okay, so the design thinking really of a paradigm focused on the human being, yeah, on getting creativity by bringing together a lot of different profiles and using just, you know, some basic techniques to exploit their creativity potentials. I think you also have seen a picture yesterday which resembles a little bit to that one. Yeah? Yesterday's picture, it was in the end phase, yeah, where I've seen some, you know, some sort of peanut, yeah, shape, where you had some sort of wave, yeah, a bigger wave and a smaller wave. Yeah? I think what they showed you was a little bit like that, yeah, that in this design thinking process, you typically walk through phases where you diverge, yeah, that is to say, where you create a lot of ideas, as many as possible, without any rating. Yeah, it's just important that you have a lot of ideas. And then you would converge again. Yeah, so you select ideas. Yeah, you cluster ideas together. Yeah, you collect all individual post-its and cluster them according to related ideas. Yeah? Some functionalities that your application is supposed to be able to perform, for example. Yeah? And this is what is typically an element, or the element of every sort of creativity process, however the particular process looks like. What you would always have, yeah? You have some sort of problem identification and understanding phase, yeah, which is very important for you to understand what are you supposed to do and what is the real problem, where then you are supposed to be highly creative, creating a lot of ideas here, so divergence phase, then a converging phase for idea selection, and then some sort of decision for the next phase and preparation. And in this way, you typically in chain, yeah, so put together many such elements. Yeah? So you decided for some ideas, and then you have to develop them further. Yeah? Make some stories around them. Yeah? Stories will help sell some of them in particular, and for those selected, you would create a prototype. Yeah? You would create several prototypes, maybe. Yeah? You would select some specific prototypes. It's always something like an enchainment of diverging phases and converging phases. Okay? And in today's talk, yeah, we will focus on, you know, some techniques to foster divergence here, yeah? So to open your minds up, and then as well some techniques to select then ideas here. What is also important to make not only your students understand, but this is probably for students, this is less of a problem than for industry people, that it's also natural and normal. Yeah? I mean, the more creative you are, yeah, the more effective you are in running through these peanuts here, yeah, whatever, the more likely it is that you will, for some ideas, you will say, okay, I don't look into those any further, yeah, because other ideas I consider them better, or maybe I can't implement that idea. So it's normal. That's, I mean, call it failure or something, yeah. Failed ideas, it's not failure, yeah? It's even success, yeah, because even if it turns out at a later stage of the process that you can't implement the idea, I mean, this idea may become relevant in a later stage, at a later stage, yeah, because even if your organization does not move, the context moves, yeah. So Earth continues turning, yeah, and the legislative context changes, society changes. Everybody back. So, as announced, before moving on to the first creativity techniques, a few words about mindset and team culture. Very important, some just, simple. Yeah, simple and basic, but from our experience, really essential principles to adhere to in creativity sessions. Yeah, obviously you still need some time to get settled. So, especially when it comes to the very early phases of ideation, yeah? When you get your, let's say, in the 24 hours of innovation, when you learn about your challenge, yeah, of course you will do deep problem understanding and things like that. Yeah, we'll talk about that later on. But when you create the first ideas, it's important to, from the outset, get rid of all constraints and preconditions, especially of implicit ones. Yeah? If you get a challenge where you say, okay, like what you have seen, find parking spots, yeah, in, I don't know, in a 10 million city or 20 million city or whatever, rather than in a village. So if you get some constraints which are needed to define your challenge, of course you have to take them into account from the very beginning. Yeah? But when it comes to sort of implicit constraints, like, this is too expensive, or we don't know the technology, yeah? I don't know, when I think visualization, we will do a hologram, yeah? We can't do that, yeah, because it's too expensive, yeah? And we can't work with laser and, such kind of implicit constraints that you impose on the team because it's your box. Yeah, you don't know how to do it today. Yeah, but nobody knows if maybe other people can do it today already, or if we can do it in 10 years or in 20 years of time. Okay? And this is always very difficult with industry in particular. Yeah? You immediately have arguments like this one. Yeah? When I ask you to think outside that box, I forgot to ask you to think inside this one. Yeah? So immediately you have some additional constraints, yeah? Especially with cost and with organization and things. It has to fit in this business unit and all this kind of stuff, which is really difficult to take into account. Yeah? So you want design thinking. Yes, the bolder the better. Only you can't change the product. Yeah? We want a new product, but we can't change the product. Or the shape of the packaging. Or find new consumer inside. Or deviate from the style guide. So then, what's left to design? Yeah? This package burst. Yeah? So this is sometimes what happens also in creativity teams, that team members always say, oh no, yeah, you are crazy, yeah, impossible, we can't do that. Yeah, this is exactly what you should not do in design teams. Yeah? So the answer is never no but it's always yes and. Yeah? So a constructive attitude, very important. And this will lead to the fact that you and your colleagues will be able to express your ideas freely. You don't have to have fear of, it may be too crazy, yeah? they may kill me, yeah, for that idea. Yeah? This must not happen in creativity sessions. Yeah? Because in this phase, especially in the early phases, every idea is a good idea. Yeah? The craziest idea, which seems to be most impossible to realize, might turn out to be the best idea. Yeah? So that's very important. Yeah? Like arguments like this one, if it were really a good idea, someone would already be doing it and we would follow late to market with an undifferentiated knockoff. Yeah? So highly destructive here. Yeah, I already said that. Adopt an open, constructive attitude for your colleagues' ideas. Rather say yes and instead of yes but or even no. Yeah? And the most important thing is to have fun together. Yeah? And this also brings us back to the ambience that you have to create also in the 24 hours of innovation. Yeah, nice infrastructure where students can have fun together. Yeah? So it's not about pressure, it's not about... it's like with children. Yeah? I mean, I come back to my picture with the children and babies. Yeah? Just take care that they are happy, that they laugh, yeah? And they will do nice things. Yeah? And the same with students. Yeah? They need to have fun doing things. Good. So now I will switch over to the part which is dedicated to some selected creativity techniques and methods. And I tried to classify them. I mean, this classification is not a textbook classification. Yeah? In any case, I already tell you, it's quite difficult to find literature where you have even websites, yeah, where you have a nice, concise summary of creativity techniques. Yeah? That's also why I tried to, I didn't even have these slides myself, although I do creativity sessions quite regularly. I always wanted to come up with that, but I never had the occasion to really do it. Yeah, so it's, your handouts are somewhat, you know, sort of guidebook, a concise guidebook over creativity techniques. And if you want to know more about them, at least you have the keywords. Yeah, I added some statements to each of them, some examples. And you can go on Google, type in some keywords, and you find articles to know more about them. Yeah, that's how the slides are meant. So a first structure in here is given by the following categories. Here we have so-called free association techniques, where we don't have any sort of structure in order to associate ideas to each other to create clusters or so, as opposed to more structured association techniques. Yeah? And then we have something like combination techniques, yeah, where we try to combine different keywords, different methods, functions, in order to come up with something new, something creative. So, for each of these categories, I've proposed a few techniques. Yeah, some of them quite popular, some of them a little bit less. So first you see the brainstorming. Yeah, it's a typically free association technique. As I told you, no guidance in brainstorming. Yeah, just put your ideas on post-its typically. Yeah? I did not even list that, yeah, because everybody knows that. I focused on brain writing techniques, so which are in the end also sort of brainstorming, but with a little structure, yeah, with a little guidance. First brain writing method, this method so-called 635, which also comes in different flavors, yeah, but one of them is you take a A4, so a normal paper sheet, you divide it in 3 columns, and so you have the participants sitting around, yeah, like you have done it yesterday, and each participant gets such a sheet of paper and writes one idea in each of the columns. Yeah, it could be the 3 columns, could also make 5 columns for your 5 functions that you had to reflect on yesterday, for example. Yeah, so this is not strict, yeah, but it's 635 typically. So you have a 6 team. I think I have it here somewhere. No. Typically 6 team members, 3 columns, and then 5 ideas, something like that. Yeah. That's the idea why it's called 635. So each party will have one idea in each of the columns. After 5 minutes, the sheets are passed around so that the persons receiving the sheets can further develop the ideas the others have put on. Yeah? So you get inspired by the others in a quite structured form. Okay? So this is a technique without discussing among each other. Yeah? It's rather a silent technique, if you want. But the idea is that your brainstorming is guided by the ideas that others created in a quite orderly way. Yeah, because you don't discuss, you don't, at least at the beginning. Yeah. So this 5 is for the 5 minutes. Yeah? Six people, 3 columns, and 5 minutes. Yeah. After 5 minutes, you change. I think it's quite easy to understand. As I told you, depending on how much time is left on Thursday, I want to run through a few of those techniques. Yeah? So each team applying different techniques to a particular challenge. Or another flavor of that is passing around cards. Yeah? So each participant writes their ideas on a card, 1 card per idea, which they pass on their neighbor. Yeah? And then to get inspired, the neighbor's cards can be used. So you can use your neighbor's ideas in order to produce further ideas. And in about 20 minutes, about 50 to 70 ideas can be generated in a group of 6. Yeah, so group of 5, group of 6 is the typical size of a creativity team. If it's more, then it's very difficult to have everybody active. Yeah? And if it's less, then you lack typically this diversity, yeah, that you need. Yeah? So a good size for students, whereas I always try to keep my teams in the range of 5, 6 maximum. Yeah? In order to be here productive. Yeah? And these ideas are then grouped together and spontaneously evaluated by team using a voting technique, yeah, which we'll also look at later on. Okay, so this is like brainstorming, but with a little systematic behind, and very easy to do. And focused on, so these two are really focused on generating a lot of ideas. Yeah? You don't know if these ideas really make sense, yeah? But it's sometimes you just want to, to explode the number of ideas that you have given a particular challenge. Then some other free association technique, the mind mapping. Probably everybody knows mind mapping. Yeah, who does not know mind mapping? Who knows mind mapping is most, okay, 1. So, first I show an example, it's easier to explain. Yeah? I wanted you to have a guidebook, yeah? That's why I put a lot of text inside. But it's easier to look at an example. Yeah, in a mind map, you put your initial problem, yeah, your challenge, for which you want to create ideas in the middle. Okay? And then you would create ideas and create branches for your ideas. Yeah? You would create a new branch where you think, okay, it's a completely new idea, and you would also grow these branches when ideas come up that are related to an initial idea. Okay? So here, for example, we have a mind map for time management. Okay? And there is some branch, for example, here, whatever this means, support, yeah, for time management, supervision, help, encourage, discretion, is somehow here related things for supporting time management, for example. Okay? Or here, some big picture chunking, bite-sized, multitasking, diversify, things like that. So it's meant to be a tool that allows you to keep trace and to also cluster the ideas as they come up much easier than, much more easily than you do it with post-its. Yeah? Very often with post-its are quite static. Yeah, if you realize that some ideas on post-its are related to each other and you want to create clusters of related ideas, you have to take each post-it and, rearrange. It takes time. Yeah? Whereas the mind mapping, nowadays also very nice computer tools exist for doing this kind of mind maps. Yeah? And it's quite easy and convenient to use them even during the creativity. If you are very familiar with the tool, then I always say during creativity sessions, use tools as simple as possible so that it doesn't happen that due to a tool problem, you would diminish the dynamics, yeah, of the group. Yeah, this is always some hairy issue which should not happen. But these tools are very, very easy to use, and it's very nice to, first you create some initial ideas, and then when it turns out they are somehow related, you just move them with a mouse, create new clusters and things like that. So it supports first the dynamics with which the ideas come up, and also mind maps are visual. Yeah? And tools also allow you to ameliorate, to enrich your mindsets by, icons and pictures, and, many people are much more visual than, text-oriented. And so it's nicer to visualize and helps keeping an overview of the ideas that you have generated. Yeah? So it's about growing an organic tree-like structure. It's about dynamically structuring ideas. And then these tools also allow you to have different views. Yeah? So for example, you can have a top-level view where you just see the top-level clusters, and then you can dig deeper down, going into more detail, open just selected branches, to investigate particular idea clusters further and things like that. Yeah? I have 2 or 3 nice examples from my students' works I will show to you tomorrow, so that it becomes more tangible for you. Yeah, this is another example. It comes, this is typically not with a tool, so it's also very easy to do it, without any computer tool. But of course it's not so dynamic, and then the clustering is a little bit more difficult. You see some ideas are somehow related, and very quickly the nice tree-like structure can get a graph, so you can have some links between different branches, which are then already, you can see that much more difficult to grasp than a pure tree-oriented structure here. Okay? I also listed some very popular tools for mind maps. Yeah? In particular here, OpenMind and FreeMind are open source and free tools. Yeah? Maybe some of you have even used them already. Very nice to use. Mind Manager is a commercial tool, but is, so to say, to almost become standard in the industrial environment, with a lot of nice facilities where you can even create websites out of your mind maps, where you can create project plans out of your mind maps. So very nice tool facilities available here. Then, so from the more free, association techniques, more unstructured association techniques, with some more structured techniques. One of them being the Walt Disney thinking chairs. Yeah, have you heard of that? Thinking chairs, maybe the thinking hats. Yeah, thinking hats are more known. I'll have a slide on the hats too afterwards. So what is the idea? It's called like that because Walt Disney, he used to work like that, for creativity. He said, okay, I associate 3 chairs. Typically they have different colors. And your collaborators, your colleagues in the team, depending on which chair they sit, they should assume a different role. Okay? So here, if you sit on the black chair here, this would be the dreamer chair. So your role is now in the creativity team to get rid of all constraints, to be as crazy as possible, and my dream would be if I could for the given problem. If I could fly to the dentist, if I wouldn't have any aches at all when I am at the dentist. Maybe if I don't know. Okay, so without any constraints, I am allowed to, I have to dream. Of course, sometimes it's the little weakness in these techniques is that sometimes, in order, for example, to be a dreamer, sometimes it's not in your character. So some people can't even do that. They are so much inside their box or whatever But the idea is that we should always make an effort to look at the challenge from different points of view. Yeah? And symbolically, by sitting down on this chair, which is identified, this is the crazy chair, yeah? I have to be crazy. Yeah? And then you have the doer chair. Yeah? So here the realist in this picture. Yeah? So the one bringing the dreamer down to earth a little bit. Yeah, well, it's nice, but okay, fly to the doctor, but how will we do that? Yeah? So a little bit to, you know, if you just dream, of course you need phases where you need just the dreamers. But if you just dream that at the end of the challenge you won't have a result. Okay? So that's why you need as a balance this doer role, and then a little bit the moderator, the critic. Yeah? So asking questions. Yeah? Did you think about that? Yeah? How would you do that then? And things like that. Yeah? So typically at minimum, Walt Disney thought the 3 roles are always needed to come up with nice ideas that first are somehow creative, innovative, but can then also be put into practice somehow. Okay? Which does not mean that, you know, they have to be able to come up with a product idea that has to be able to be produced now, depending on the scope that you get for the challenge. A product that you will be able to have in 20 years of time, whatever. But still you need to show the solution, yeah, in a video somehow. You need to design it, you need to, and for that you need more than just the dreamer. Yeah? And you also seen all these techniques, this is also common. And we had yesterday a question on our table, yeah? Why 24 hours? Yeah? Why not 1 week? Yeah? Or even 12 hours or something? Yeah? And of course, you can extend it as much as you want, you can shrink it as much as you want. The idea being that you have a very clearly constrained time, yeah, to really work on your challenge. And it turns out for all these techniques that typically after, it depends on the technique, but between 5 minutes and 20 minutes, it should never last longer than 20 minutes. And you may realize that yourself, that the more ad hoc you are, yeah, and the more spontaneously you contribute to a discussion, in general, the more creative the discussion is. The experience is that after 20 minutes, half an hour, 45 minutes, you tend to discuss, you know, around the same subject. Yeah? You discuss to, you know, your creativity goes down. Yeah? So all these techniques are very spontaneous techniques. So the guy would not sit for half an hour in the dreamer chair. Yeah? 5 minutes and then they switch roles. Yeah? This is also a little bit surprise effect for your brain. Yeah? So the more you come into a reflection mode, a thinking mode, the more you approach the usual, you know, solution thinking approach that you run through almost every day. Okay? So the spontaneousness is a common thing to all these techniques. Then another form of that, a little from my experience, a little bit better known, is the 6 thinking hats. Yeah, the idea is very simple, only this time you don't play with chairs, but with hats. Yeah? A little easier to do, so you can prepare that. 6 hats with different colors, each. Okay, I mean, you can also do it with t-shirts or whatever. It's just to give to the stakeholder, to the person, the feeling, if I wear a red hat, yeah, or whatever, then now I should be emotional. Yeah? So how would this application that we are supposed to develop, how would this, you know, what feelings should this application create? Yeah? Should it contribute to my well-being? Yeah? Should it give me should I be eager to go to the dentist? Yeah, I can't wait. Yeah? So something like that. Yeah? So judge the idea from the feeling point of view. yeah? Or create ideas that by manipulating, by influencing your feelings, you would like your application, or the users would like your application, okay? Or, I don't know, black hat here, yeah? Focusing on difficulties, weaknesses, dangers, yeah? For some solutions we need safety considerations, for example, yeah? Or yellow hat, benefits, yeah, positives, plus points, where's the added value of the application that you propose, okay? So it's once again what I call role game is very important, yeah? Ask people to put themselves in a role, yeah? Of somebody, you know, who is white hat, rather data-oriented, fact-oriented. Red hat, somebody who is very emotional-oriented. Yeah? And then, when you run through all these roles here, then typically you should have thought about most of the aspects that your product or service will be judged against. Yeah? Because there will be some customers who, you know, where feelings are important. There will be customers where, you know, who are very cautious, yeah? Where safety, stability of your application is very important. Okay? All the hats are assumed simultaneously in the team because the ideas that you discuss together. Yeah? That's why also 6 hats, because typically, you know, many, I suppose you are 5 people in a team to six people, yeah? And the idea is not to write down your ideas, but this case is really about interaction. Yeah? The Walt Disney techniques, or these techniques are about discussing, about interacting in a structured form. Yeah? You should give arguments, you should ask questions corresponding to your hat color. Yeah? And this makes sure that these roles are represented. Yeah? The ideos, so the creators of the design thinking, yeah, they also have a similar approach they call deep dive. Yeah? Where I also say for a deep dive, so deep ideation, they also point out that you always need different roles in the team represented. Yeah? If you have a team where there are only crazy guys, only dreamers, you won't converge, yeah, to any solution. Yeah? If you have an idea, a team who are only analysts, yeah, people, you know, trying to deeply understand and asking why and how should we do that, you won't have new crazy ideas because they are too prudent, they are too, you know, reluctant to come up with very new things. So diversity once again. Yeah? So that's all what is behind here. A help to have different viewpoints on the challenge. And then you have combination techniques. Yeah? The so-called morphological table, anybody heard of that? It's also quite known in some environments, especially in technical environments, where the essential factors, elements, aspects, sub-problems of the complete problem are identified in the team. So some parameters could be the usability of your application, yeah, could be the speed of your application, could be the stability of your application, yeah, or facility of, I don't know, the portability or the how easy it is to be updated, whatever. So some parameters that are important, yeah, to your application, that are important to customers. And these should be independent from each other. Yeah? That is to say, the presence of one shall not imply the presence of another one. So one example, if you have as a parameter the material that you use, and as another parameter the surface structure, is a bit difficult, yeah? Because the surface structure depends on the material. Yeah? So they should be independent of each other. And then the idea is first to, independently of the complete problem, you find solutions for the identified parameters. So more or less you force yourself, which is sometimes helps you, your brain sometimes needs a focus on a particular aspect. If you have always got the complete picture, then it might be difficult, yeah, because you always, for a particular parameter, you're always constrained by the other parameters and things like that. Okay? And then you find solutions through combinations of the parameter solutions, which might might inspire you with solutions that you wouldn't have thought about, because you have never looked at the different parameters independently of each other. Yeah? And then it can happen that, along the ways you find that some parameters are dependent, so you can modify and things like that. Yeah? So in practice this looks like that. Yeah? You have some critical functions, you reflect about solutions just for these functions independently, and then you just try to, given that, you try to combine. Yeah? And it might lead to combinations that you wouldn't have thought about that before. Yeah? Here is some example I took. You always have the references where I took that from. Yeah, obviously some gym device, where some parameters that are important for the gym device is how to improve grip, to exercise the legs, to improve the cardio, and to exercise the arms. Yeah, so maybe some, treadmill or something, which, elliptical trainer, whatever that is. Yeah, and there are some important parameters. And then you see some ideas that are just dedicated to how could we improve the grip. Yeah? Ideas, how could we exercise the legs? How could we improve the cardio? How could we exercise the arms? And then for the device, how would we design the device to come up with a new elliptical trainer? Yeah, we could, however, we could try different combinations here. And maybe this leads us to something which we haven't seen before. Okay? Because if we just think about elliptical train, of course we always have in our brain what we know from today's gyms. Okay? So that's a little bit the idea. Yeah, there's another example here for some food elaborating device, a little bit different form. Where you have vegetable picking device, what kind of device you use, sort of shovel or triangular plow, a tubular grabber, a mechanical picker, then a placing device, could be conveyor belt, rake, and so on, dirt shifting device. So obviously they want to design a machine to elaborate food. Yeah? And for that you need to pick the raw material, you need to transport it on the manufacturing line. Then you need to get rid of some dirt, some impurities. Then you need to package the food somehow on that line, and then you need to transport it to the final destination. And then you see they reflected on that just independently. Each of those individual functions, solution possibilities, totally independent of each other, and then you could try out different techniques to come up with a new idea of a machine that does all that. Okay? Then there are also some declinations of that, a morphological matrix where you do that with two factors, with two essential factors that you oppose to each other. Let's look at one example immediately. For example, if you have here a parameter energy, and as a function you want to capture energy, transform energy, import water, transport water, for example, and then for each of these categories here, like capture energy in a mechanical form, which kind of principles could you use? Capture energy in fluid form, which principles can you use? Okay? And you can do that, and then come up, for each of these cells, individual solution possibilities, and then you have the freedom to combine. And maybe by this combination you come up with new ideas. And such kind of morphological matrix, there's another example for electromotor, is by the way also at the basis of trees, of one of the tools that trees provides you, which you will see in the afternoon. This kind of solution matrix approach, where you have given two contradictions, two technical contradictions. Let's say you want to make something more stable without gaining weight. Yeah? So normally to make something more stable you would add material, yeah? But if you add material then typically your device would get heavier. Yeah? And then the trees would, in this kind of solution matrix at this cell, yeah, would tell you what you could do in order to avoid that. Yeah? Yeah, you have a question? Yeah? You're totally free. You're totally free of that. Yeah? The only thing should be that the two parameters that you are looking at, they should not be dependent on each other. Yeah? Like here in this the principle that you use in the rotor and the starter of the electron motor, they should not be dependent on each other. Because then it's difficult to think about. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you're some sort of system how you eliminate ideas then. I mean, the matrix allows you to come up with, you know, different combinations which sometimes may not even be feasible or work, like this one here, which in this case you could say you can leave them out. Yeah? Yeah. Normally, yes. Yeah, so it forces you to think about every combination. It might happen that some combinations make no sense. Yeah? In which case you would leave out the content here of a particular matrix field. Yeah? But sometimes, probably also just from today's point of view, it makes no sense, it's not possible, but it may be possible, yeah, in 20 years or something. Yeah? So there might be some real physical contradictions where you can't put anything, but sometimes it may also just appear to you that it's not possible because you've never seen it. But it could, at least it forces you to think about the combination, yeah, which probably you would not do if you're not forced to see it in front of you. Yeah, that's the idea. Sort of confrontation of different parameters in a combination that normally you would not use then. Yeah, that's a little bit the approach. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Any other remarks, questions? Yeah.
So that means maybe the results are 2 or 3 prototypes possible, right?
Sure. Very good. Yeah. But there is no unique. Typically, then there is no. Where did we see some selection also in the table? Yeah. I mean, this is not a unique path. It's not a solution path. It's some path that you can choose, and as you're saying, you could prototype, you could then use another grabber, for example, yeah, with the same conveyor belt and do a prototype for that. Exactly, yeah. So this matrix helps you to think about different, so then you could split the team and say, you work on this prototype, you work on this prototype, you work on this prototype, for example. Yeah?
After that, when we get this prototype, our program that we just try to test it from blah blah blah, maybe possible test or.
Yeah, I mean, then is when it comes to selection techniques. Yeah? Or then you have to have some criteria. I mean, when you look at the 24 hours of innovation, yeah, for the official challenge, then I mean you might get some constraints, yeah, that you have to take into account in your design, and it might, yeah, I like this one more, I like this one more, yeah, and sometimes it's also not so easy to vote, yeah, and there are some techniques for that help, yeah. But I mean, you're right, and that's also the difficulty, especially in companies, yeah, who are always used to, you know, one workshop, one result, yeah. And very often you can't do that in creativity workshops. Yeah? You end up with a lot of results, maybe 3-4 prototypes, which are all, from the current perspective, feasible and nice. But you know that you don't have the capacity to work on more than one prototype. Yeah, so what to do? And then it's always specific, who decides, yeah? Maybe in a company it would be the guy responsible for the team, or the manager, yeah, who decides, yeah? Which in general is not good, yeah? Because it should be a team decision, because it's the team that would work on later on the prototypes, yeah? And so they need to be motivated, they should like it, and things like that. Yeah? But there is no rule, it depends on the context. Yeah? When you do it with your students, maybe you as a teacher would decide, yeah, to put them on the right track, or to get the result that you want for you. Yeah? But you can also leave it open to students, teach them selection techniques, and they vote among them. What is also nice to do, what I also do sometimes when, I know, 5, 6 different groups of 5 students, yeah? That for the voting phase you remix the teams. Yeah? So you would invite 2 or 3, if you have teams of 5, you invite 2 students from another group, yeah, into another group. Yeah? So that is to say, you get the outside view. Yeah? So that not just the team who created the ideas vote. They have sometimes difficulties because they like all their ideas, but to get some outside view, other students who discover what their colleagues have done will say, yeah, but this is cool. Yeah? And not only what happens very often when we do that, not only they say this is more cool, is cooler than the other one, they also bring in new ideas. Yeah, so when they see the ideas of their colleagues, they say, yeah, but why didn't you think about that? But I wouldn't do it that way. Yeah? So even not only they help them select, but they bring in additional ideas. Yeah? So you have a lot of options to do that. Yeah? And there is no rule. And once again, these tools, they help you to widen the solution space, yeah? To think about things you normally would not think about if you just think in a daily pattern. Yeah? Afterwards, the selection, which is better, which is not so good, this is up to you. Yeah? Okay. Yeah, and then we have combination techniques. Yeah? Attribute listing. The most easily changeable parameters of product system are identified in the team. These parameters are listed in a table with their current values as they are, and variations of the current values are listed below and discussed. Yeah? And this is particularly helpful for generating product variants. Yeah? So let's say you already designed an application, you know how it works, you know how the interface looks like, which kind of functionalities you have. Yeah? And you list the key features of your application that are important. Usability, speed, stability, I don't know what. Yeah? How easy it is to update them. And then for each of those features, you would find attributes saying, okay, currently my user interface is, I don't know, a graphical user interface with these kind of features and things like that. My speed is like that. And then you try to just think about other values for these attributes. Yeah? What if it was double as quick? Yeah? What if it were not red but blue? Okay? So you modify the attribute values totally freely, which should inspire you about different possibilities of doing your product or your service. Okay? So you more or less you identify the features that are important, and you just modify the attribute values, totally free, so independently of your real thing, yeah? Which helps your brain to think about attribute values and parameter combinations that you would probably not think about as such. Okay, so very easy. Yeah. Hmm? Yeah, for example here, so a feature, one of the features here, the material that I used for my product is currently wood. Yeah? So the attribute of this material used is currently wood, and then you would say, okay, which other attribute values I could have other than wood? Totally independently. There could be plastic, there could be glass, there could be metal, there could be whatever. Yeah? So you just isolate the attribute from your product. Yeah? Which you will also see in trees, yeah? where you identify some principles, some technical principles, like if your product in the end should heat something up, yeah? or cool something down, or if your product should, I don't know, do a hole somewhere. Yeah? You decouple the technological principle, in this case it's a material, from your particular product. And then you look up in a catalog what kind of possibilities I have to fill up this attribute. Yeah? What other materials I have than wood? Yeah? What other colors I have than brown? Yeah? So you decouple yourself from your specific context, from your product. You dream. Yeah? And yeah, exactly. Yeah? Yeah? Yeah, can be a very basic attribute. Yeah? But the idea is that you dream more easily then. Yeah? If you have always your product in mind and it was always black, yeah, and it was always made out of wood, you can't imagine it differently. Yeah? So you decouple your product's attributes from the product. You think about what other possibilities I know for that attribute, yeah? And then you go back to your product space. What if my product suddenly was made out of plastic? What if it was suddenly red rather than black? Okay? It's just a technique to decouple your brain from your box, yeah? From your product as you know it. Okay? Any other questions? Anyway, as I told you, so we have to do a little bit that so that you get a first overview, yeah, and then we will do it also in practice. We don't have the time to run through all this in practice. It will be a little bit chaotic, yeah, that's why we chose it that way. So, then some more techniques, another classification here. Confrontation techniques and imagination techniques. Confrontation techniques where basically you confront your challenge with, some words, some keywords, that you would normally not use in the context of your challenge. So let's go through these. Excursion technique. The team identifies analogies to the problem, and they confront these analogies with the problem and try to derive solution ideas. Yeah? I don't know, so going to the dentist, I say, okay, why going to a restaurant? Yeah? So I put myself in a scenario, instead of going to a dentist, I go to a restaurant, for example. Okay? So, why would I like to go to a restaurant? Yeah? What would me like to go to a restaurant? Why do I like going to a restaurant more than going to a dentist? Yeah? And then you try to reflect, okay, I would like a restaurant because, you have nice food and nice ambience, yeah? And you are together with other people, you can chat and things like that, yeah? Yeah, it seems crazy, yeah? And then you know what comes, yeah? And now you transform that to the dentist, okay? So that somehow nice things to eat is probably not so good idea, because if you have toothache, then you don't want to eat, yeah? But you want to be in nice company, yeah? You want to chat with people, yeah? So maybe you can transform the dentist waiting room in something else, that, something where everybody is waiting and silent and reading papers, something where you have nice experience, which distracts you from your toothache, yeah? Which makes you forget your toothache, something like that, you know what I mean, yeah? So you find analogies to your given problem, and typically analogies which you know well, and you transform it to your space. Yeah? Very often innovation comes from transferring things that we know already in one domain to the other domain. Yeah? But very often we don't think about it, yeah? Because we are so formatted from daily lives. Provocative word technique. Yeah? Keywords that are not directly linked with the problem are listed. Principles, characteristics inherently linked to each keyword are elaborated. And then the identified principles, characteristics that are combined with the problem for the inspiration, or are combined with the problem solution, thanks to spontaneous, unfamiliar combinations of problems, principles, characteristics. Yeah? So sometimes an extreme thing is you have your challenge and you take a dictionary and you open it in whichever place, and the first keyword you find you put on the flip chart, yeah, and then you characterize that keyword. Yeah, I don't know, so you have this dentist type, I don't know, a racing car. Yeah? So put racing car on the flip chart. And then you characterize what is characteristic for a racing car. Yeah? So it's very fast, yeah, you can turn fast in bends, yeah, it's full with sponsor logos, it's I don't know what. Yeah? And then from all these characteristics of the racing car, you try to map it to your dentist application. Okay? Provocative. Yes, the two things that have nothing to do with each other, yeah, but maybe some characteristics of the racing car could contribute that your application is nicer, is faster, is more stable, yeah, because a racing car is very fast, yeah, still very stable in bends. Yeah? It's full with sponsor logos, yeah? So maybe you can transform that to your application somehow, yeah? That you can get it financed by sponsoring or things like that. You know? So totally provocative, two things that have nothing to do with each other, and you get inspired. Yeah? And you can do that with as many keywords as you want. Okay? Very easy, actually. It's just to have, you know, we don't have that in daily life. So the courage to confront your problem space with some solution that has nothing to do with it. We won't do that, we wouldn't do that, yeah? Normally. Yeah? But we have to put our brain in a condition which is not something which is a daily condition, yeah? Which anyway we do every day. Yeah? Then we can exploit the creativity potential. New patterns. And then there are some flavors of this confrontation. Yeah, you can do that visually too. Yeah, you can have a set of pictures. Yeah, I don't know, a very nice ocean. Yeah, with sunset, or I don't know, a monkey. Yeah, an animal. Yeah, and then you would characterize this picture. What do you see? What do you like? Yeah. And then you map this, what you found, to your challenge. Yeah? So I like, I don't know, the sunset, yeah, the colors, yeah, I like the ambience, yeah, I like the silence, I don't know, yeah. And then these keywords you confront it with your particular challenge. Yeah? Picture cards, brainwriting, yeah, where you pass around picture cards, yeah, and depending on the picture you get, you try to come up with ideas for your challenge. And also the 3 solution principles that you will learn in the afternoon. Yeah? You get confronted with a solution principle and check if it's relevant for your technical problem. Yeah? Then this one, I'm sorry about that, you don't have this one in your scripts, yeah? In your lecture material, because I only inserted it, you know, I had to send this to Kuzol some, I don't know, 1.5 weeks ago, and I added this one, I'm sorry about that. But if you just put the keywords camper, you find a lot of material. This is quite well known. You find a lot of material on that in the internet. There is not so much of a problem, I guess. So this camper is, it's just, you know, it's the initial letters of 7 different keywords, activities that you should use to confront your challenge with. Yeah? So you confront your challenge with substitution, yeah? Where you could ask questions like these ones here. What materials or resources can you substitute or swap to improve the product? Yeah? What other product or process could you use? What rules could you substitute? Yeah? Can you use this product somewhere else? So you substitute the use, yeah, of the product. What will happen if you change your feeling or attitude towards this product? So substitution of existing things by other things. Or combinations. Yeah? What would happen if you combine this product with another or create something new? Yeah? So currently you have two products for one purpose, maybe you can combine the two. What if you combined purposes or objectives? What could you combine to maximize the use of this product? How could you combine talent and resources to create a new approach to this product? Yeah? So once again, just about forcing you to think in a different direction. Yeah? Then the A is for adaptation, so adapt. How could you adapt or readjust this product to serve another purpose or use? What else is the product like? Who or what could you emulate to adapt this product? What else is like your product? What other context could you put your product into? What other products or ideas could you use for inspiration? Yeah? And you could, if you're a team of 6, it's 7 letters, but you could have each student reflect on one aspect. Yeah? One reflects about substitution, one reflects about adaptation, and you could hand out this checklist here. Yeah? So our brain, for being creative, of course, you need an open space, but it's proven that you need some guidance as well. Yeah? And brainstorming just leaves the open space and does not give you guidance. And all these tools just tries to give you some guidance. Yeah? Some are overlapping, yeah? But this is all they're about. There's no magic behind. Yeah, or then modify, yeah, so you can read through those questions, I won't do that here. Put to another use, yeah, so could you use your product somewhere else, or eliminate, yeah, how could you make your product leaner, yeah, simplify your product. Mm-hmm. And then the last one is for reversing. Yeah, what could happen if you reverse this process sequence? And you will see trees also forces you in these directions. A combination, inversion of things. Yeah? If currently you heat up things, what would happen if you cool down things? Yeah? Things like that. Yeah? Forcing you to think about unusual things. Yeah, and there are some tips on that. Yeah, so yeah, we'll go over this. Then some imagination techniques. Yeah, these ones I also like. Yeah, very very much like role games. Yeah, so put the designers in roles and let them think. Yeah, so try to become the problem. Yeah, so put yourself more or less in the position that you are affected by the problem. So not in the designer who has to design a solution for a problem, but think that you are really in a position. Yeah? For the dental application, maybe they told you, yeah? So first put yourself in a position of having toothache. Yeah? And being in the office, having toothache. Yeah? So what is the problem nowadays? Yeah? Yeah? Try to become the problem yourself. Put yourself first in the problem situation and not immediately in the solution space. Yeah? Because the more you understand the problem yourself, you feel the problem yourself, the more you are likely to think about solutions later on that are really of added value and that hit the problem. Yeah? And not, what happens very often, we think about solutions and then we try to find the problem. Yeah? What very often happens in engineering. Yeah? So what do I run through in this situation? How do I live it? Yeah? What is really difficult today, yeah, in such a situation? Yeah? Or take a picture of the problem. Yeah? The problem is investigated by participants like a camera focus. Yeah? And you know, with a camera, you can, depending on where you look at, you can focus on different problem aspects. Yeah? So one aspect of this, you know, how to get as quickly as possible to the dentist. I don't want to wait 1 week, 1 month. Yeah? I focus on that. Yeah? So if I go there, I don't want to be there. Yeah? It's always the ambience is horrible, and I have fear. Yeah? I'm scared. So camera focus on this aspect. Yeah? And describe the problem that you face nowadays in this focus. Yeah? Just to help to get deep problem understanding once again. Okay, yeah, I think for today I should leave it at that, yeah, before I move over to selection techniques, which is a chapter which is then related to, you know, this converging phase of this creativity or problem solving element that I showed to you at the beginning. This one here, yeah. So the selection technique. So today we have been working in this space here. So the phase of divergence, of creating a lot of as many ideas as possible, and being guided in doing that. And then on Thursday we will focus on some selection ideas. Is shorter. Yeah? There are not really so many selection ideas. Yeah? So most of the time on Thursday I will then spend on the case studies, yeah, to make it more lively. And the case studies in particular with some, I call it empirical methods. Yeah? So it's a little bit the methods I use very often, which are partly combinations of the techniques that you have seen, which you don't really find in textbooks, but from my own experience work very well, yeah, both with industry people and with students. And this is also to show you that you need not stick to exactly what you have seen, and that I have to do it exactly that way, otherwise it doesn't work. Yeah? But you can also be creative in proposing techniques to your students. I will focus on that, and then probably there will be some time left. So 1.5 hours for you to get in groups and to try out one or the other technique yourselves. Do you have any questions, remarks, comments, complaints? Whatever, everything is welcome. Even in Thai, because I have my translators. Yeah? Okay, complaints you can do in Thai. Yeah? The other thing is in English. Oh, no, you can combine. You can combine. Yeah? I mean, the only thing, it should be clear, because you may have observed the charming thing, the characteristic that is common to all of these tools, except then for the more like trees and the morphological table, which are already typically used more for real technical problem solving, yeah? When you're already more advanced in the creation process. But all the others, they are very ad hoc, very spontaneous, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, you know? So the only thing, it should be clear to your students what they have to do. Yeah, so not fuzz around, okay, where do I have to whom should I give my sheet? Yeah? Where should I put my post-its on? Yeah? So it should be clear. Yeah? But you can select. Yeah? And also in general, so when it comes to preparing your students for that, experiment with them before. Yeah? In the lectures, in the exercises that you do with them, just experiment with them, what they like most, where they are most effective in. Yeah? So you collect experience yourself in using these different tools. Don't be reluctant to just try them out, yeah? And observe your students. Yeah? And then also, don't hesitate to adapt them, yeah, to how it works for you. Yeah? So it's just a guidance, yeah, and the basic idea behind is to help your brain work in different patterns, yeah, than your brain works every day. That's all the fuss behind these tools, yeah. And very often they rely on, some confrontation, yeah, with a combination of things that you wouldn't have thought about, yeah. Some inspiration of principles that have been observed in a domain which is completely different from your domain, for example. Your brain wouldn't go look into a domain like, if you are in medical, you wouldn't look into energy, yeah? You wouldn't look into whatever. But maybe there is a transfer also. It's all about these techniques. Or structured ones. The unstructured ones are mostly for, helping you discuss together. Yeah? In nonetheless some structured way, yeah, in a sense that each student should assume a particular role in a discussion, for example, yeah, but not more. Yeah, anything else? Does anybody ever have experienced, maybe used yourself, or have applied as a participant somewhere any of these techniques, apart from mind mapping, where almost all the heads were nodding? Any experience in, I don't know, some thinking hats, for example? Morphological table? No, not really. Or this kind of confrontation techniques where you freely associate keywords to your challenge? Not really. Or did you apply some different techniques that you didn't see here? It's also possible. Huh? Yeah, Lego. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Lego is ingenious. Yeah? Yeah, but also Lego, yeah, is also in the end, you have some solution principles that correspond to your Lego pieces. Yeah? So each Lego piece can fulfill a certain function. Yeah? It could be a brick, yeah, among other bricks. Then, there are some special bricks, yeah, which normally are windows, yeah, which are transparent. Then they could have some function associated, a tooth wheel or something. Yeah? So it's also some predefined, known from experience functionality associated to pieces. Yeah? And the creativity, I know, yeah, you were pushing, yeah? And then the creativity comes by the freedom of combining these Lego pieces in a way and that's observe the babies and the small children, yeah? Who don't build their Duplo or Lego by instructions, but they don't know, yeah? They just put together in a way that, they're not meant to be put together, but suddenly they come up with something creative. Yeah? In the end, it's awesome, yeah? Like that.